My daughter was maliciously harmed and thrown into the lion enclosure. I knelt and begged my wife, Eleanor, the zoo's starkeeper, to save her life. But to my horror, Eleanor shoved me away with her foot. "Just a few animals, Ethan. What could they possibly do to Daisy?" she spat, her face contorted with impatience. "Such a drama queen at her age. It's all your fault for spoiling her rotten. Get your pathetic self out of my sight. Don't you see I'm spending quality time with Oliver?" A week later, I received Daisy's torn body in a box. At the same time, Eleanor posted on social media. The picture showed a starlit night sky, with her and her white moonlight, Oliver, sitting together on the zoo's Ferris wheel, looking like a perfect couple under the twinkling stars. I clicked like, and then casually tore up the terminal leukemia report in my hand. My daughter was gone, and I had no intention of living alone either. 3 days after Daisy disappeared, an anonymous person sent me a video. I opened it and saw Daisy locked in a steel cage, suspended high in the air. On her wrist, glittering faintly, was the rainbow bracelet I'd given her last week. Below the cage, several lions paced restlessly, teeth bared. Their eyes were bloodshot, emitting low, guttural growls, clearly starved. 5 days. Bring me 1 million in cash, or I cut the rope and open the cage. The sender texted this message and then blocked me, the video and text automatically disappearing. Darkness swam before my eyes, and I struggled to breathe. 1 million. For a programmer with only 4 years of experience, it was an astronomical sum, an impossible demand. They never intended to let Daisy live. My clothes were soaked in cold sweat, and I was too weak to even move, my mind replaying that horrific scene. Daisy was so young, so innocent. She hadn't even truly experienced the beauty of the world yet. How could something like this happen to her? No, even if I couldn't raise the money, I couldn't just watch Daisy die. I bit my tongue hard, the metallic taste of blood jolting me slightly. With trembling hands, I turned on my computer, hoping to trace the IP address, clinging to the faintest thread of hope. Heaven rewards the persistent. After 4 days and nights without sleep, I finally pinpointed the sender's location, the suburban wildlife park in our city. Finding the location, I drove there as fast as my exhausted body would allow, pushing my car to its limits. Today was the 5th day. Every second wasted was a nail in Daisy's coffin. On the way, I called the police and hired several burly men with combat experience, offering them a generous sum. I would use every means necessary to rescue my daughter. Arriving at the zoo, my eyes scanned every inch, every corner, desperate not to miss anything. Passers-by stared at me strangely, probably thinking I was insane. As dusk fell, I finally found her, the abandoned lion and tiger den in the zoo's forgotten corner, a place sealed off after a tragic incident years ago when the animals had turned on a keeper. I remembered Eleanor mentioning that the lions involved in that incident were never captured, and now they were being used against my daughter. Looking up, my heart leaped into my throat. A steel cage hung precariously from a cable car line high above, a small, frail figure trapped inside. Below, the hungry lions circled, their predatory eyes fixed on the cage. My heart pounded in my chest, a frantic drum against my ribs. I couldn't rush in blindly. Whoever had abducted Daisy and brought her here unnoticed was likely watching, waiting. Any reckless move could cost Daisy her life. But just waiting wasn't an option either. The men I hired were in position nearby, ready for my signal. I needed an opening, a distraction. Suddenly, Eleanor came to mind. She worked here, a seasoned handler of large animals. She would know how to manage them, even in a heightened state, like during mating season or feeding frenzies. She'd handled far more dangerous situations. But ever since her white moonlight had accused me of bullying him, Eleanor had blocked me on every platform. I ran a hand through my hair, a groan tearing from my throat. The sky was indeed falling. Twilight deepened, and the zoo's colorful lights flickered on, but I was blind to their beauty. Just then, a couple emerged from the brightly lit path ahead. Eleanor and Oliver. Seeing Eleanor, I surged forward, all caution forgotten. No matter what, she had to save Daisy. Oliver, I specifically took a day off to cheer you up. Are you feeling better now? Eleanor's voice was soft, solicitous. Thank you, Eleanor, for setting aside your work for me, Oliver replied, his tone sickly sweet. Having you here is my good fortune. I'm already over being upset with Ethan. I reached them just as I heard this nauseating exchange. Eleanor's tender expression shattered upon seeing me, replaced by a venomous glare. She pointed a finger at me, her voice sharp with malice. What are you doing here? Can't you see I'm on a date with Oliver? Get lost. You're ruining our evening. Oliver coughed weakly, clutching his chest, his voice gentle and weak. Eleanor, please don't be angry with Ethan. He probably just misses you. I ignored their sickening display of affection, dropping to my knees, grabbing Eleanor's pants leg in desperation. Please, Eleanor, you have to save Daisy. She's been kidnapped, trapped in the abandoned lion and tiger den. My voice cracked with fear and despair. You're an expert at handling these situations. Daisy is your daughter, your own flesh and blood. Please, save her. Tears streamed down my face, blurring my vision. I fumbled for my phone, showing her the photo I'd just taken of Daisy in the cage. Eleanor scoffed, kicking me away with a sneer. She glanced at the screen, her face hardening with cold indifference. Just a few animals, Ethan. What could they possibly do to Daisy? She had the audacity to skip school and play around. She can handle a few lions. Such a melodramatic child. It's all your fault for spoiling her. My eyes widened in disbelief, unable to comprehend the callous words coming from Daisy's own mother. Get your pathetic self out of my sight. Don't bother me. Can't you see I'm spending quality time with Oliver? With that, Eleanor grabbed Oliver's arm and stalked away, leaving me kneeling on the cold ground. My fingers dug into the dirt, scraping against the rough earth until they bled. Daisy, my poor Daisy, your useless father has failed you. I can't save you. Clutching at the last vestiges of hope, I contacted my hired help, deciding to split into two groups, searching for any opportunity to rescue her. Before we could even get close to the den, I received another video. I clicked play, and the image that flashed across the screen ripped through me like a physical blow. The cage that had held Daisy was now open, lying on the ground, the rope severed. And the lions, they were tearing at something small and limp, their muzzles dripping crimson. It was unrecognizable, a mangled, bloody mess. Ah! Daisy, my Daisy. All the strength drained from my body, my legs buckling beneath me. I collapsed to my knees, vomiting blood onto the ground, a deafening ringing filling my ears. Just a week ago, Daisy had begged me to take her to the zoo after her exams, to visit her mother. But today, when Daisy was brought here, her own mother chose to indulge in a romantic rendezvous with another man, refusing to lift a finger to save her, condemning her to this horrific end. A message popped up on my phone. Thanks to you, they had a hearty meal today. Reason snapped. I blacked out. When I opened my eyes again, I was home, in my own bed. The men I'd hired, seeing me collapse, and knowing there was no hope for Daisy, had brought me back. As soon as I tried to move, a warm gush erupted from my nose. I raised a hand and saw it covered in bright red blood. I went through half a box of tissues, but the bleeding wouldn't stop. Pressing a towel to my nose, I hailed a taxi to the hospital. The diagnosis came back, terminal leukemia. Looking in the mirror, I saw a ghost of myself. My eyes were bloodshot, my cheekbones sharp and prominent, my lips cracked and bleeding, crusted with dried blood. I was barely human. A young nurse, her eyes filled with pity, asked me about treatment options. I thanked her with a sad smile and declined. Love had long since shattered. My parents were frail and ailing. And now, Daisy was gone. A terminal illness felt like a release, not a death sentence. I walked home, each step heavy, my soul shattered into a million pieces. A box sat on my doorstep, seeping a dark, reddish stain. I knew what it was, yet I still reached out, my hand trembling, and opened it. Inside was a mass of mangled flesh, unidentifiable, horrifying. On top, stained with blood, lay a rainbow bracelet. Daisy, my Daisy. The dam of suppressed grief burst, and a primal scream tore from my throat. I wept uncontrollably, slamming my head against the wall again and again. Why Daisy? Why not me? She was just a child. I kept hitting my head against the wall until my forehead was raw and bleeding. But the pain was nothing compared to the agony in my heart. I couldn't even save my own daughter. I didn't deserve to live. With trembling hands, I prepared to contact someone to arrange a decent burial for Daisy, to give her some peace in death. Just then, Eleanor posted another update on social media. The photo showed her and Oliver, wrapped in each other's arms on the Ferris wheel, the city lights twinkling behind them. Even overtime is bliss when you're with the one you love. Staring at the picture, a hollow laugh escaped my lips. When we first fell in love, we were so broke we lived in a barely finished apartment. To build a future for us, I worked day and night, writing code until my fingers were raw and bandaged. Eleanor would see my bandaged hands and her eyes would fill with tears, vowing to work harder and share the burden. That's why she risked her life training tigers and lions, anything to earn the high-performance fees. Eventually, she became the zoo's star keeper. Any group of unruly beasts would become docile pets in her hands. But Eleanor, the one person who could have saved Daisy, had instead pushed our daughter towards death. And now, Daisy's body wasn't even cold, and she was playing truant, betraying our marriage. All the beautiful memories of the past now felt like cruel slaps in the face. Ethan, you blind fool, how could you have ever fallen for a woman like this? I tore up the leukemia diagnosis and called the crematorium, asking them to collect Daisy's remains. I then contacted a lawyer, instructing him to use the last $3,000 in my account to draft divorce papers and buy Daisy a burial plot. After all this, I finally collapsed, unable to hold on any longer. I desperately wanted to hold on, at least until I could collect Daisy's ashes and lay her to rest. But the disease was relentless, consuming me. I grew thinner, weaker, my mind slipping in and out of clarity. One day, I faintly heard Daisy crying, "Daddy, why are you arguing with Mommy again?" I reached out, wanting to hold her, but Daisy vanished, and my own body began to fade, becoming transparent. So, I was already dead. The only thing tethering me to this world was the burning desire to ensure Daisy's peace. In life, she had known so little joy. Even in death, she couldn't have dignity. Unwilling to accept this, I drifted aimlessly, carried by the wind. Many days later, I found myself floating near Eleanor and Oliver's home. She saw the divorce papers sent by the lawyer and flew into a rage. Well, Ethan, you've really grown a spine, daring to play divorce games with me. He can forget about coming home next month, or the month after that. Let him get lost. Eleanor's voice was sharp and venomous. I had proposed divorce in my last moments, unable to bear the pain any longer. But in her eyes, it was just a game. A shiver ran through my immaterial form. My soul felt cold. Eleanor, I just don't understand. Why are you so good to Ethan? And yet he wants to divorce you, to abandon you. But don't be too angry with him. Maybe he's just upset because Daisy skipped school, Oliver said, nuzzling Eleanor's chin, his voice soft and placating. Hearing this, Eleanor's anger flared even hotter. Like father, like daughter. It's because Ethan dares to defy me that Daisy had the nerve to skip school for days. When she gets back, I'll spank her bottom red. Even now, Eleanor preferred to believe Daisy was simply playing truant, refusing to consider that something might have happened to her. I had been blind, so utterly blind to have ever loved such a woman. My thoughts swirled, and I heard Eleanor roar. Let me tell you this, as long as Eleanor is alive, Ethan will not get a divorce. If he dares to leave me, I'll make a scene at his workplace. He better think twice. This was her final ultimatum, but I was already dead. Suddenly, the shrill ring of her phone cut through the air. Eleanor answered impatiently. Hello, this is Eleanor speaking. Good day, Madam Eleanor. We've located the body of your husband, Ethan. Please come to the police station at your earliest convenience. Eleanor's furious expression froze. What nonsense are you spouting? Ethan is dead. We are not mistaken, madam. Your husband has been deceased for some time. The autopsy report has been sent to your phone. Please come to the station as soon as possible." The officer hung up. Eleanor clutched the phone, her knuckles white. A flicker of something like hope, stirred within my dead heart. Did she still care? Even a little? But the next moment, my heart shattered again, each shard piercing me anew. Ethan's parents are still in the hospital, barely clinging to life. Now he's dead. Who's going to look after those two old folks? Eleanor sighed, rubbing her temples in annoyance. Don't tell me I'll have to spend my money again? That freeloader, what a curse he is. With that, she accessed my bank account. Since our marriage, Eleanor had controlled my bank account, setting the passwords, monitoring every transaction. Whenever we argued, Eleanor, proud and unwilling to apologize first, would use my living expenses as leverage, forcing me to be the one to give in. When we were in love, I had seen it as a harmless quirk, but now it felt like a cruel irony. I had been so subservient in the relationship, and she could suffocate me with a flick of her wrist. A sharp notification sounded from her phone. The last $3,000 in my account were gone. My soul felt like it was being ripped apart. That was Daisy's burial money. I reached out frantically, trying to stop Eleanor, but my hand passed uselessly through the air, forced to watch helplessly as she transferred Daisy's burial money. But the most heartbreaking revelation was yet to come. $3,000, not even enough for their surgery. I might as well take it for myself, Eleanor muttered, her voice laced with disgust, transferring the money to her own account. But my parents needed that money for their treatment. They weren't terminally ill, just weakened by years of hard labor. Treatment wouldn't cost much. Besides, most of my earnings over the years had gone to Eleanor. She could easily afford their surgery. She would rather pocket my last $3,000 than save my parents. Daisy had no grave, and my parents had no hope of recovery. Marrying Eleanor had brought nothing but misery in life, and now, even in death, there was no peace. As Eleanor tried to exit the banking app, she accidentally opened the autopsy report sent by the police. Seeing my corpse on the screen, she gagged. That disgusting man, so ugly even in death, he's going to blind me. Even in her disgust and nausea, Eleanor still cursed me. I knew she was a clean freak, but my death photo wasn't particularly gruesome, just pale, with red blotches all over my skin. When Oliver had gastroenteritis and vomited all over her, she hadn't even flinched, taking care of him all night in her soiled clothes. Even without a physical heart, my chest ached with a dull, persistent pain. Perhaps, in her eyes, anything related to me was repulsive, disgusting. I should have realized long ago. Some people are just not meant to be loved. Seeing Eleanor transfer the money, Oliver's eyes gleamed with calculation. Eleanor, I was thinking of taking a trip, just for myself. Could you? Maybe. He lowered his gaze, his voice laced with a delicate hint of neediness, a picture of feigned vulnerability. Eleanor only saw her little brother, longing for affection. But I saw clearly the cunning and calculation hidden deep within his eyes. Of course, darling. Whatever Oliver wants, just tell Eleanor. You don't need to be so shy. Eleanor's face softened, her mood instantly brightening. She pecked Oliver on the cheek, then promptly transferred the money to him without a second thought. Thank you, Eleanor. Oh, and I know you don't want to see Ethan. How about I go to the police station for you? We're like siblings, after all. It's all the same to the police. Oliver's voice was hesitant, as if he was summoning immense courage. Seeing her beloved brother being so considerate, Eleanor was moved to tears. She hugged Oliver tightly. Ethan treated you so badly before. Wouldn't you be terrified to see his body, to have nightmares? Of course I'm scared, but as long as it makes Eleanor happy, I'll do anything. Oliver gazed intently at Eleanor, puppy dog eyes fixed on her face. Eleanor couldn't resist any longer, pulling him towards the bedroom. And then, they began to make love, right there. In the house I had worked so hard to build, enjoying the intimacy of marriage, while my parents lay suffering in the hospital. And Daisy's body was decaying, devoured by maggots. The next morning, Oliver rose early, carrying large bags and luggage, and left for the police station. Eleanor was puzzled why a simple trip to the police station required so much luggage, but Oliver just said he wanted to surprise her, so she didn't press further. Not long after Oliver left, a knock came at the door. "Hello, madam. I'm from the crematorium. Are you Madam Eleanor?" "What is it? What does the crematorium want with me?" Eleanor called out, not bothering to open the door, her voice impatient. "Before I died, I had sent Daisy's body to the crematorium, hoping they would cremate her and send me the ashes. But I hadn't lived long enough to receive them. So, following protocol, they had contacted the next of kin, Eleanor. We have completed the cremation of the deceased, Daisy. We've confirmed her father is also deceased, so we are delivering her ashes to you. Please accept our condolences." Hearing this, Eleanor flung open the door and saw a man in black standing there, holding a small box. This is, her face paled, her voice trembling. The crematorium worker replied somberly, "Your daughter, Daisy, is deceased. This is her urn." Eleanor's face was a mask of disbelief, her voice stammering, When did this happen?" "Daisy just skipped school, went out to play, didn't she? We are not privy to the exact cause of death. You can contact the child's father. He was the one who sent her body for cremation." Hearing this, the concern on Eleanor's face vanished instantly, replaced by a furious glare. "What? Her father sent her? Impossible. Her father is dead. You're telling me he sent her for cremation?" She spat, her voice rising in hysteria. "Tell me, how much did that little brat pay you to lie?" The crematorium worker, unaware of my death and taken aback by Eleanor's reaction, his face darkened with disapproval. "I truly don't understand how you can call yourself a mother. Your own child has died, and not only do you not care, you're acting like this." Eleanor snapped, snatching the urn from his hands and hurling it to the ground with all her might. With a sickening crack, the urn shattered, splintering into pieces, Daisy's ashes scattering across the doorstep. "Oh, you're really something, you know that? Lying through your teeth without even blushing," Eleanor shrieked, spitting venomous words, her finger jabbing inches from the crematorium. Worker's eyes. "Daisy skipped school to go to the zoo. That's it. She's faking her death to avoid coming home. Just wait till she gets back. I'll beat her within an inch of her life." The numbness in my heart throbbed with fresh pain. In Eleanor's eyes, Daisy was perpetually worthless, a nuisance. But Eleanor had conveniently forgotten just how much Daisy adored her, how deeply it wounded Daisy to feel unloved by her own mother. Not content with just verbal abuse, Eleanor planted her foot in the ashy white powder, grinding it into the ground with vicious force. "This isn't even real ash, it's just chalk dust. Trying to pull a fast one on me with this garbage? Do you think I'm blind?" No. That was Daisy's real ash. I roared silently, desperately reaching out, my spectral hand stretching towards Eleanor's foot, trying to shield the last traces of Daisy's earthly remains. Hadn't Daisy suffered enough in her final moments? Did her own mother have to desecrate even her peace in death? But a soul could do nothing. My hand passed right through her foot, utterly useless. I could only watch helplessly as she smeared Daisy's ashes across the doorstep, scattering them to the wind. The crematorium worker, his face etched with disgust, gave up on reasoning with her and turned to leave. I realized then that even more precious than life and death was a parent's love. Eleanor, having vented her rage, swept up Daisy's ashes with a dismissive gesture and tossed them into the trash can. Filthy rubbish, disgusting. How could I have given birth to such a worthless creature like Daisy? Her anger escalating, Eleanor stormed out of the house, hailing a cab to the apartment we once shared. Our first foothold in the city, built with years of hard work and shared dreams. But since Eleanor had seen Oliver, bruised and broken, weeping as he begged her not to blame me, she had never returned. Today, she was back, but only to unleash more fury. I sighed, a soundless breath, and drifted after her. Bursting into the apartment, Eleanor marched straight to Daisy's room, a storm of fury unleashed. She ripped the doorknob off Daisy's bedroom door, then swept all the books off Daisy's desk, sending them crashing to the floor, cursing loudly. Worthless brat. All those years of raising you. Wasted. You learned nothing good. Just like your father, always lying to me. Just as she was about to throw more of Daisy's books, Eleanor suddenly stopped. In her hand was a notebook, a pink cover adorned with a cartoon Kuromi. It was a gift from Eleanor to Daisy when Daisy had first started elementary school. Eleanor's rage seemed to falter, choked in her throat. Her hand trembled as she picked up the notebook, gently opening it. Inside, page after page, were filled with Daisy's childish, painstakingly written words. Mommy and Daddy are fighting again. I feel so sad. Teacher gave me a little red star today. It's so pretty. I want to take it home and give it to Mommy. Mommy says she can train lions. She's so amazing. When I grow up, I want to be as strong as Mommy. Each word, each clumsy sentence, was a testament to Daisy's pure, unwavering love. Eleanor froze, the hand holding the notebook shaking violently. There had been a time, when Daisy was very young, when Eleanor had shown her love. She'd spent hours with Daisy under the shade of trees, watching ants, laughing as she asked Daisy what she wanted for dinner. But ever since Oliver had entered our lives, Eleanor had begun to resent me. And that resentment had seeped into her feelings for Daisy. Gradually, Eleanor had started to disregard Daisy's emotions, treating her as a punching bag for her own frustrations, resorting to yelling, scolding, and even physical abuse at the slightest provocation. So much so, that when Daisy was in mortal danger, Eleanor had remained utterly indifferent, always leaving her things scattered everywhere, no sense of being a girl. When she gets back, I'll teach her a lesson. Eleanor snapped the notebook shut, tossing it aside in annoyance. But, surprisingly, her rage seemed to have dissipated. Always causing me trouble, never giving me a moment's peace. I'm so tired of it all. Where's Oliver? I need Oliver with me. With that, Eleanor booked a table at a luxurious restaurant in the city center, planning a romantic candlelight dinner with her white moonlight. Fine wine, gourmet food, her lover by her side. The thought of it brought a smile to Eleanor's face. But before she could even contact Oliver, disaster struck. A local news headline exploded across the internet. Man simultaneously romances multiple socialites for months, flees with 3 million yuan, sparking outrage. Clicking on the link, Eleanor froze, her blood turning to ice. The man who had deceived her heart and emptied her bank account was none other than Oliver himself. The explosive news quickly ignited a firestorm of public outrage. The comment sections swelled with thousands of posts, all condemning the heartless gigolo who had preyed on women for money. I'd say this guy isn't just rotten to the core, he is the core of rottenness, 99.99% pure scum. I remember him, always posting on social media, marketing himself as a wealthy but humble guy, not chasing fame or fortune, who knew his money was earned by stepping on the hearts of countless women. I'm going to be sick. I'm going to be sick. Usually, disgust just hits the skin. But this time it's hitting my chest, my pelvis, my abdomen, even my heart. Eleanor's face turned ashen, her body trembling, completely submerged in the agony of betrayal. I, on the other hand, wasn't surprised in the least. Oliver had seduced a married woman, framed me, and now this. Given his past behavior, nothing he did would shock me anymore. After an hour of stunned silence, Eleanor grabbed her phone, frantically trying to contact Oliver, demanding answers. But before she could even dial, he actually called her. Without waiting for Eleanor's barrage of questions, Oliver launched into a carefully crafted explanation. Eleanor, listen to me. Those women meant nothing to me. I never even touched them. The so-called romance in the news was just for their money. I know I'm not a great photographer, but I wanted to give you a good life. Please forgive me. And my running away, it's all because of Ethan. He's not really dead. He's working with the police to deceive you. I accidentally found out, and now he wants to kill me to silence me. Eleanor was stunned, her voice laced with disbelief. Ethan isn't dead? But the autopsy report, I saw it myself, that can't be faked, right? Such a clumsy, transparent lie. Yet when Oliver uttered it, Eleanor actually seemed to waver, a seed of doubt planted in her mind. That was a mannequin. The police photos were blurry, so you couldn't see clearly. Look at this picture. Oliver sent a high-resolution image. It showed my body, pale and covered in red blotches, clearly resembling a leukemia patient. However, my skin had a faintly artificial look, and upon closer inspection, even showed faint stitching lines. Eleanor quickly compared it to the autopsy photo of my body she had seen. Indeed, they looked identical, except the details in the police photo were less sharp. I knew it. How could Ethan just die like that, out of the blue? He was just trying to scare me. That bastard. May he rot in hell. Eleanor exploded in renewed fury, completely discarding any remaining trust in me. Watching this unfold, I could only laugh, a hollow, bitter sound. Such a flimsy, easily debunked lie, and Eleanor swallowed it whole, unable to distinguish between a mannequin and a real person. Seeing his deception work, Oliver quickly moved to the next step. Eleanor, do you have any money left? Can you send me some more? I really want to be with you, but I need to survive first. No sooner had he spoken than Eleanor emptied her bank account, leaving only a few $100s for herself, transferring the bulk of her remaining funds to Oliver. Oliver, men's jealousy can be terrifying. You must be careful of that sinister little man, Ethan. Got it. He's coming after me again. Eleanor, I have to hang up now. Don't call me unless it's an emergency. Oliver started running, the call disconnecting amidst the sound of heavy breathing and frantic footsteps. The chase, the escape, it was all a performance, a carefully orchestrated act to facilitate his getaway with the money. My heart was cold, devoid of emotion, yet I couldn't bring myself to speak, forced to watch Eleanor blindly believe his lies. It wasn't out of lingering affection for her, but because all that money was earned through my blood, sweat, and tears. Seeing it vanish into thin air felt like a physical wound. Tragically, Eleanor remained blissfully trapped in the illusion that Oliver was devoted to her, even willing to suffer for her. Living on the meager $500 left, she ate stale mantou and foraged for wild greens to survive. Before long, she became gaunt and pale, her hair brittle and lifeless, her lips cracked and blistered. Even in our poorest days, I had never let her endure such hardship. Yet, for Oliver, she willingly subjected herself to this self-inflicted misery. Disappointment and heartbreak warred within me, leaving me a helpless spectator. Time blurred, and one morning, Eleanor finally realized that Oliver hadn't contacted her in a long time. Her hand trembling, she dialed his number, only to hear a robotic voice announcing that the number was no longer in service. Before she could fully process the shock, a deafening crash reverberated through the apartment. Bang! The doors splintered open, and a group of women stormed into the apartment. Leading them was a woman dressed in designer clothes, radiating an air of wealth and privilege. Behind her, a posse of tough-looking women, clearly her enforcers. Slap! The woman in designer clothes lashed out, a brutal slap sending Eleanor sprawling to the floor, a tooth flying out of her mouth. You cheap slut. It's all because of you that Oliver dared to dump our sisterhood. Let's see if I don't beat the living daylights out of you, you little hussy. Remember this face. I'm Serafina Schwe, daughter of the CEO of a listed company. Better watch yourself in the future, and don't mess with people you can't afford to provoke. Serafina's words were dripping with venom. Hearing the name, it clicked. Serafina Schwe was a well-known socialite in the city, part of a clique of wealthy, influential women. They were known for their penchant for handsome men, and Oliver had clearly played them all. Now, they were humiliated and furious, and Eleanor was the easiest target for their wrath. Seeing their menacing demeanor, I knew Eleanor was in grave danger. Before Eleanor could even react, Serafina's henchwomen swarmed her, viciously yanking her hair. So that's why Oliver dared to treat Serafina's sisterhood like trash. It's all because of you, you little two-timing bitch. You lowlife. One of them grabbed a large jug of milk from the table, ripped off the lid, and poured it over Eleanor's head in a disgusting, sticky stream. "Your face is practically screaming slut. You need a good wash to get rid of the stench." Eleanor's face was already bruised and swollen, her hair a tangled mess, blood and milk mingling, dripping from her mouth. "Oliver loves me the most. You're just jealous and envious. You'll never have what I have," she retorted stubbornly, struggling to slap Serafina. "Oh, you still have some fight left in you? Break her hands for me," Serafina hissed, clutching her stinging cheek, her eyes blazing with fury. The henchwomen obeyed instantly, grabbing a hammer from their bag and bringing it down with brutal force on Eleanor's hand. "Ah!" Eleanor screamed in agony, tears and mucus streaming down her face. Serafina smiled, a cruel, satisfied smirk. "He's been sleeping around for years, probably riddled with STDs by now. You cheap slut actually thought you were special, that you were the home while all of us were just motels?" Before the words even faded, Eleanor's hand bones shattered under the relentless blows. The physical pain was excruciating, but the emotional pain was even deeper. As a star keeper, her hands were her pride and joy, the tools of her trade, her connection to the animals. Now, they were broken, useless. She would never be able to tame a wild beast with the same confidence and skill again. Watching this scene, a strange emptiness settled in my soul. I felt no satisfaction, no triumph. Undeniably, I hated Eleanor, hated her for her cruelty, her callousness towards me and Daisy, a hatred that had ultimately led to her own destruction. Yet, memories of our happier times, our shared dreams, still flickered in my mind. I couldn't completely erase Eleanor from my heart, no matter how much I wished to. And now, this agonizing ambivalence, this unresolved pain, would be my eternal torment. Not satisfied with breaking Eleanor's hands, Serafina, fueled by spite, ordered her thugs to shatter Eleanor's legs with a wrench. Eleanor's body convulsed in agony. Even the strength to scream seemed to have deserted her. They broke her legs, then roughly splinted them, then broke them again, repeating the cycle countless times, until Eleanor's legs were permanently mangled, unable to bend. "A cheap slut like you, whores around and steals other women's men, doesn't deserve to stand. You should crawl on the ground like the filth you are." Serafina laughed, a shrill, triumphant sound. She then stamped her designer heels heavily on Eleanor's face, grinding them into her skin, before finally leaving with her entourage. Eleanor lay sprawled on the floor, a pathetic, broken figure. Blood trickled from the corner of her mouth. 2 distinct shoe prints marred her face. Blood-soaked hair fanned out around her head, her limbs twisted at unnatural angles. In the throes of unbearable pain, her consciousness began to slip away. Years ago, she had been just a circus animal trainer, dressed in rags, barely earning enough to eat. She had always assumed she would live and die like that, unnoticed, insignificant. Until one night, she had encountered a man. He was surrounded by a pack of wolves and looked utterly helpless, completely clueless about how to handle them. Maybe it was because he reminded her of herself, equally poor, equally unremarkable, equally stubborn. So, Eleanor, usually aloof and reserved, had done something completely out of character. She had intervened, blowing her whistle, diverting the wolves' attention. "Get up, the ground is filthy," she had said, reaching out a hand to help him up. Later, they had married and had a beautiful, loving daughter. But somewhere along the way, everything had gone wrong. After Oliver appeared, Eleanor had started to despise me, to hate me. She had seen me as an obstacle to her happiness, someone who deserved to die. Even though I had always treated her well, working tirelessly to fulfill her dreams, even at the expense of my own health. And now, with me gone, had she truly found happiness? All the past happiness, all the beautiful memories, shattered into fragments. The image of Ethan, gentle and smiling, twisted into Oliver's venomous, calculating face in her mind. Eleanor couldn't help it. She pressed her broken, mangled hands to her head and screamed, "No, no, no." It was all wrong. All of it. Ethan had been the one who truly loved her. She had been blind, a fool, to be swayed by Oliver's sweet words, to condemn Ethan to death in her heart. And Daisy. Countless precious memories flashed through her mind. Daisy had given her mother her whole heart. And what had Eleanor done in return? Ethan had told her Daisy was kidnapped, but she had dismissed it, choosing to spend her time with Oliver on a frivolous date. She was not fit to be a mother. In the throes of agonizing regret, Eleanor suddenly felt a chilling realization. Since returning home, she hadn't seen Daisy. She had blindly believed Oliver's lie that Daisy was just playing truant and hadn't given it a second thought. But it had been over a month, and Daisy still hadn't come home. Where was she? A terrifying thought pierced her heart, and Eleanor began to mutter, her voice trembling, "Daisy is fine. She must be fine." But she wasn't fine. I sighed sadly. In our first encounter, Eleanor's incredible animal handling skills had saved my life, and I had fallen hopelessly in love with her. But hearts change, and youthful love, no matter how passionate, can still wither into mutual loathing. Once, a stranger, Eleanor had been willing to risk her life to save mine. Now, with her own daughter in mortal danger, she hadn't even bothered to look, let alone grieve for my death. As Eleanor desperately prayed, her phone rang. She struggled to crawl towards it, her broken bones grating against the floor. The voice on the other end was a police officer. "Madam Eleanor, the crematorium informed us that you refused to accept the ashes of your daughter, Daisy. I'm calling to confirm." The officer paused, his voice heavy with sorrow. The crematorium's autopsy revealed multiple lacerations on the deceased's body. The corpse was severely corroded by stomach acid and, dismembered into pieces, packed into a cardboard box. "We have preliminarily determined this to be a premeditated, horrific murder case." The rest of his words faded into a muffled drone. Hearing the description of Daisy's death, Eleanor's ears started to ring, darkness closing in on her vision. So, Ethan had been telling the truth. When he had begged her to save Daisy, it was because she was truly trapped in a cage, facing the imminent threat of being devoured by lions. She, who had handled countless dangerous animals, a few lions would have been nothing. If only she had gone to look, even just for a moment that day, Daisy might still be alive. But she hadn't gone. She hadn't even bothered to look closely at that photo. She had personally sealed her daughter's fate. Emotions surged within her, overwhelming her, crushing her. Eleanor finally broke down. "Daisy, Daisy, Mommy was wrong." She screamed, her voice hoarse with grief, blood trickling from her mouth. "Mommy shouldn't have treated you like that. Please, please come back and see Mommy, just once." She pounded the floor with her broken, mangled fingers again and again. But Daisy was gone, her ears forever deaf to her mother's desperate pleas. Too late. Everything was too late. Even remorse, when it came, was utterly useless. Fate continued to mercilessly punish Eleanor. In the days that followed, as she lay broken and half alive, a series of devastating blows rained down upon her. My parents, after days of desperate struggle in the hospital, had succumbed to their illnesses, passing away in excruciating pain, their bodies emaciated, their bed sores festering. The police had identified Daisy's kidnappers, a group of unemployed drifters hired and orchestrated by Oliver. The money she had transferred to Oliver had been funneled into offshore accounts, disappearing into the murky depths of the gray market, irretrievable. Hearing these devastating tidings, the last spark of light extinguished from Eleanor's eyes, leaving behind only a bottomless, vacant void. My heart ached for Daisy and my parents, burned with hatred for Oliver, and even for Eleanor. But now, I was dead. These emotions were just knives twisting in my soul, serving no other purpose. I could only hope that in the next life, I would be wiser and never again fall in love with someone like her. Days later, Eleanor, driven by a desperate, primal instinct, managed to crawl out of the apartment. Her hair was matted and filthy, her wounds oozing pus. Countless passers-by wrinkled their noses, pointing and whispering, "Look at that woman, she's terrifying, a lunatic, isn't she? Let's go." We need to stay far away from her. Eleanor remained oblivious, muttering to herself, Husband, husband, where are you? Have you gone to find Daisy? Why didn't you take me with you? Her voice broke, and she started to sob uncontrollably. I understand now. You're angry with me, aren't you? I shouldn't have believed that vile man. I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry. I was speechless, a knot of anguish tightening in my chest. Belated affection, cheaper than weeds. It was too late for apologies, too late for regrets. If only she had woken up sooner, this tragedy could have been avoided. Eleanor crawled into a hospital, grabbing at passing doctors and nurses, desperately asking about my body, where it was. Hearing them say it had already been cremated, she burst into a mixture of laughter and tears, then turned and crawled back out. Her wounds reopened, staining the sidewalk with fresh blood. Many passers-by averted their eyes, unable to bear the sight. But Daisy had suffered far more than this. Her current plight was merely the bitter fruit of her own choices. I felt no pity for her, only sorrow for my Daisy. Thankfully, I knew I would soon be joining her. That night, Eleanor dragged herself to a bridge underpass. She huddled in the darkest corner, pulling her tattered clothes tighter around herself for warmth. Only then did I notice she was clutching Daisy's diary and my old mouse, relics from our past life together. Before drifting into a fitful sleep, she clutched them tightly to her chest, her only comfort in the cold, unforgiving world. The next day, Eleanor crawled out to beg. Please, have mercy, give me some food. Only if I don't starve to death, can I go and join my husband and daughter. She rambled incessantly, repeating the same plea to everyone who passed. Kind-hearted people would give her scraps of food, cruel ones would kick her, using her as a punching bag for their own frustrations. As the days bled into weeks, my spirit grew increasingly transparent, fading, thinning. Eleanor, too, seemed to be losing her humanity, becoming a shadow of her former self. Months passed, and miraculously, Eleanor's legs healed. Perhaps it was the cycle of karma, for on the very day Eleanor could stand again, Oliver happened to walk by. He had finalized his plans to start a new life abroad and was returning to Eleanor's apartment to retrieve the documents he had left there. After so much effort, finally got rid of that whole family. All their savings, now it's all mine, hee. Oliver rubbed his hands together, his eyes gleaming with avarice. No one would have ever suspected that the self-proclaimed, pure-hearted photographer was actually a wolf in sheep's clothing, a heartless predator. Seeing that familiar face, a primal roar tore from Eleanor's throat. With a surge of adrenaline, she lunged at him with every ounce of strength she possessed. You liar! You ruined me! You ruined my husband and daughter! Oliver's pupils constricted in terror, but it was too late. A warm wetness spread across his neck, followed by searing pain. Her teeth had ripped open his artery. Eleanor, her mouth dripping blood, howled maniacally, If I have to die, I'm taking you with me. You're a monster. You belong in hell. Oliver clutched his neck, kicking Eleanor in the face with brutal force. Now, he no longer bothered to maintain his pretense of gentleness. Don't try to play the victim. You wouldn't even save your own daughter. If anyone deserves hell, it's you. You deserve to be torn apart piece by piece. He was covered in blood, wrestling with Eleanor, both of them transformed into feral beasts locked in a death struggle. In the end, they both collapsed, lifeless, in a pool of blood. My soul, too, began to dissipate, fading into nothingness. Just before I vanished completely, I heard a sweet, clear voice behind me. Daddy, have you come to be with me? Smiling, I turned back and finally, I saw Daisy. Yes, my darling. Daddy and Daisy will never be apart again.